What's going on? It's Suk and I'm back with a brand new video on SuperDuprTech. And in today's video I shall be bringing you my full and in-depth review of the 2022 M2 powered MacBook Air. Now we are on the road to 5,000 subscribers, so if you are new around here then I must ask you to hit the subscribe button, clicking the bell icon to be notified when a new video goes live. But without any further ado, let's hit the titles. So first things first, let's get into talking about the design of this MacBook Air. It has indeed been completely redesigned and follows the design language in line with the newer MacBook Pro models, meaning for the first time ever, the wedge-shaped profile has disappeared. It's still made of aluminium and glass and is built very well with no flex to the chassis. It can be purchased in 4 different finishes, from your standard silver and space grey to starlight and midnight. Unlike the MacBook Pro models, the keyboard deck is the same colour as the rest of the device. You'll also notice there are no noticeable holes for the speakers like we see on the MacBook Pro. Instead, the speakers fire from under the display, which then bounces off the display aimed towards the listener. The MacBook Air has no branding depicting which model it is, even on the underside like we see with the newer MacBook Pro models. And the Apple logo on the lid of the device does not light up like those older models, and instead, like the new MacBook Pro models, it has a polished finish. The displays on these newer MacBook Air models aren't really much of an improvement when compared to the previous models. In fact, the only notable improvement is that it's slightly larger with slightly narrower bezels. But with it, it brings the display notch, which sits front, top and centre. While it has an improved FaceTime HD camera and tucks away some elements of the interface like the menu bar, I haven't really found much of a use for the extra screen real estate. It has a 2560 by 1664 resolution, which is slightly higher than the 2560 by 1600 resolution of the previous M1 model. Those 64 additional pixels go towards the menu bar. And while the notch is the face of the Apple brand when it came to their phones, it now is the face of the laptop brand as well. Who knows, in the future maybe we'll have a dynamic island and yeah, let's not do that, Apple. Let's not do that. The display uses LCD technology and it doesn't have any of the mini LED technology that we find in those MacBook Pro models. You'll also find the display on this MacBook Air is locked to 60Hz and it does not support ProMotion like we once again see on those MacBook Pro models. As I mentioned, it's not a mini LED display, which means it cannot get brighter than 500 nits. Although it can still display colours from within the P3 colour spectrum, and it still supports Apple's True Tone technology. Like I said, it's a slight improvement, and at this price point it leaves much to be desired. If you have ever used one of the 14 or 16 inch MacBook Pros with their mini LEDs, their ProMotion support, I do think at this price maybe we should have got something like ProMotion, but for those who want that technology, the MacBook Pros exist for a reason, and I'm sure Apple will sell you one of those. This new MacBook Air brings back a port, MagSafe, which like the previous models magnetically attaches to the side of the MacBook and can now support fast charge, meaning this MacBook Air indeed could fast charge to 50% in 30 minutes. You'll also find that this cable is braided and is colour matched to the colour of the MacBook. And the fact that this cable is braided will help with durability over the years, as if the cable breaks you can just swap it out and get another one. The great part about how this charger has been made is, unlike those previous ones, the cable is completely independent of the power adapter, which means that if either component was to break or if the cable was to fray many years down the line, you could just get another cable or another power adapter. You also get 2 Thunderbolt USB 4 ports and a 3.5mm headphone jack, which now supports high impedance headphones. The most disappointing thing about these ports is they only support one external display, and whilst there exists other methods to have more screens connected, Natively, it can only support one, which means you'll need to get an M1 or M2 Pro or Max MacBook Pro in order to have more than one external display connected. Talking about the displays, you'll notice the iconic notch from the iPhones has now made its introduction to the MacBook Air. It houses a full HD webcam, which is certainly an improvement over the webcam of previous MacBook Airs. Sadly, it does not feature Face ID like the iPhones, and if it were to ever come to a Mac, it most certainly will be on the MacBook Pros before the Air. But I'm not going to mark it down, as Touch ID is still fast, responsive, and if I'm being honest with you, it almost never fails. If you're in the ecosystem and you have Apple Watch Unlock turned on, then hell, you almost never need to touch Touch ID either. The 2022 MacBook Airs have updated microphones, which has meant when having FaceTime calls and using Siri, it picks up my voice surprisingly well. Take a little look at the webcam from the previous MacBook Airs from 2016 and the new model, and then the MacBook Pro. This is a FaceTime HD camera test on the 2022 MacBook Air, so you should get a good idea as to how well this full HD webcam on this MacBook performs, along with how the image signaling processor is performing that it's found, of course, within the M2 chip. So this is being recorded directly from the MacBook itself, so you should get a good idea as to how well my voice is being reproduced. Now, it is worth noting that I do have a bit of a cold at this moment, so that is something you might want to take into consideration, but I do think it's performing quite well, especially for FaceTime calls, Teams, Skype calls, all of that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be more than good enough. I probably would have asked for center stage, given the fact that we've got the notch up there, but yeah, it's wishful thinking. Maybe we'll see that in the MacBook Pros at some point, but yeah, for sure, I do kind of like it. What are your thoughts? Let me know down below. And this is pretty much how it looks when using the FaceTime HD camera on the 2021 MacBook Pro. Now, of course, this has got the M1 Pro chip in it. It should pretty much have the exact same webcam, but of course the image signaling processor is a little different in this compared to that found in the M2 of the MacBook Air. But yeah, what are your thoughts just comparing the two? Of course, I'll get the other MacBooks in and we'll see how they perform. Well, I mean, I can already see the difference on this, but God, it feels like there's a delay from when I'm speaking to what I can see on the screen as well. But anyway, this is what the 720p camera would have looked like on the 2017, I believe, MacBook Air. Yeah, once again, you should be able to tell the difference in the audio from the microphones, along with how the image is being processed. It looks like everything is just so much more grey. There is not much depth to colour. It just, yeah, you can clearly see that between that model and this model there is, the newer model has a much better image quality. So for a lot of people that may potentially be upgrading from this particular model, yeah, you're definitely going to notice that difference. I can assure you of that much, I promise you, which is to be expected. I mean, we're looking at half a decade difference in the machine, so there's definitely going to be a difference. I can promise you on that much. But yeah, this is really off-putting, the fact that I can see my lips moving maybe a couple of seconds after the fact that I've spoken. So yeah, it just seems maybe the image processing isn't as fast as those found on the Apple Silicon machines. Who knows? But yeah, there is certainly a difference to be had. But yeah, what do you think? Does this warrant 5 years of improvement, on what we've seen previously on the M2 MacBook Air? Does that warrant it? Let me know down below. For the longest time now, Apple have been the brand to beat when it comes to trackpads. And while other competing brands have been improving year over year, Apple haven't really changed the recipe. And if it's not broken, why change, right? It's still incredibly responsive and very accurate, with intuitive gestures. Once you use the machine for a little while and try to learn those gestures, it honestly makes so much sense, and it will allow you to remain very productive swiping from one app or a desktop to another. The speakers on this MacBook Air, as I mentioned earlier, fire from the bottom of the display, and while they sound cleaner than the previous models, they don't compare to the MacBook Pros. Take a listen. The keyboards, ever since they ditched the butterfly keyboard, have been great. Now, while I can tell that the keys certainly aren't as stable as the butterfly keys, each key has more depth and travel, making the press of each key feel much more deliberate. Also, like those higher end MacBook Pro models, you'll notice this MacBook Air has a full-size function row. As far as laptop goes, it's honestly a solid 9. So, you'll notice I'm leaving the performance at the end, and there's good reason for it. You've probably heard hundreds of people talk about how well the Apple Silicon in these newer MacBooks has been performing, and it's no different here. While the improvements over the M1 chip have been modest, I wouldn't expect anyone with an M1 MacBook Air to upgrade strictly for chip improvements. But for those coming from older models, the improvements are even greater than those found on that previous M1 model. While the CPU and GPU have had some solid improvements, there is some areas like the SSD performance which are questionable. In fact, compared to the M1, the SSD in the M2 MacBook Air is slower. If you want your M2 powered MacBook Air to have a faster SSD, or at least one on par with the SSD found within the M1 powered MacBook Air, then you will need to opt for a higher storage configuration, starting off with a minimum of 512GB. I've uploaded a video in which I've ran several tests on this machine, testing everything from the CPU, the GPU, the RAM, storage, to networking and the HTML browsing speed. If you want to see that video, then be sure to click the card in the top right corner. But in short, anyone upgrading from a pre-Apple Silicon machine may want to take this machine seriously, as it performs better than pretty much every other machine around this price point. If you're that type of person that likes to play the odd game here or there on their MacBook, then you'll be pleased to find out that on this machine there is a few games like Minecraft, League of Legends and CSGO that you could play without running into much issues. And if you're looking to play Apple Arcade games, then you'll also find no issue. But most other games, you really don't want anywhere near this machine. If you'd like to see how this machine performs, then be sure to click the card in the top right corner to be taken to a video in which I threw a number of games at this M2 MacBook Air. Battery life on this MacBook Air has been great, which after my experience with the M1 MacBook Air, I expected it, and it didn't disappoint. Standby time was long, as I could leave it on standby, I kid you not, for over a week and come back to around 18% battery. With light streaming, browsing and typing of documents, it would easily last up to 13 hours. And that's with the machine being left on standby overnight for around 9 hours. The standby time on this machine is not something to be overlooked, especially if you're a student or someone that's traveling around and does not want to be carrying around a charger. macOS has been great across the board. Now, while I have been using it predominantly on my other machines, standout features like universal control work incredibly well. I love using the keyboard and trackpad from one device on another. Improvements made to Spotlight search have been good, as I have over 70 terabytes worth of storage, so having the ability to search one time and have it scan through all my drives is great, but the addition of being able to view these files from within Spotlight helps tremendously. And yes, we have the clock app on this version of macOS, which while I rarely ever use it, there has been times where I've not had my phone on me or my watch has been dead, and I have used the clock app through Siri to start a timer on the Mac. So there has been some instances where just by having it on the Mac, it's been a little helpful. I've said this before, but I honestly love being able to group my tabs in Safari and link them to a focus mode. So when I get to the office, my work tabs instantly open up, and when I get back home, my personal focus mode turns on, and all the stuff that I was looking at previously at home is then opened up. Just like on iOS, being able to edit and delete my iMessages has been handy at times. A lot of those features are features that while I won't use them every day, it's good to know that they exist, so that if I ever need to use them, that I can. Stage Manager for me honestly has been hit or miss. I find that on a Mac it's not as useful as it would be, say, on an iPad, as I like to view my desktop when I'm working in a program in case I need to access a file from my desktop in a pinch. A FaceTime handoff is such a simple idea which has been executed so well. I love being able to start a FaceTime call on my iPhone, and then when I need to switch it to my MacBook Air, I only need to tap 2 times and the call picks up on the MacBook Air, which saves me having to ring again, which can be annoying to the person on the other side. I've not run into many software issues. At least from how I use my Mac, the software issues that I've been having the most, honestly, is from being able to control my lights from the Home app. It feels to me that the Home app still does not work well on a Mac. I know it was a rip straight from iPad or Mac OS using Catalyst, but I certainly think it needs some sort of redesign. Honestly, try changing the colours or the brightness of some lights using the Home app on your Mac. It feels as though it takes one too many steps. And I've also been having a little software issue when it comes to connecting multiple HomePods and using the Mac to control the different audio levels, the different songs that are played in different rooms. It just doesn't feel intuitive. But as I said, these are the issues that I've been having. They're not exactly the issues the average user may ever experience. Also, am I the only one that finds it a little weird that the mouse cursor can hide perfectly behind the display notch? So, I mean, it's a Mac, which means a few things. Great build, fairly robust software, best in class performance, battery life which is the talk of the town, although it is locked into Apple's weird image, so upgradeability is basically non-existent, and if you are like most others, then I'm sure you'll have the odd USB-A device lying around, which still means you will need adapters. But if I'm being honest with you, unless you hate macOS and utterly refuse to give it a go, then you already know that you should be looking at a Windows laptop. Because from a hardware perspective, unlike every level, it's either good, great, or best in class, especially for the price. I mean it, battery life alone on a portable machine should at least be one of the top 3 most important things, along with being thin and light, which this MacBook ticks. And while there are very few select people out there that don't care about how thin a machine is, don't care how heavy the machine is, and don't care for battery life and purely care about performance, those people honestly will be suited with a desktop. Because for a laptop, portability, battery life, and performance honestly are probably going to be the top 3 things most people should be looking at. And then we should start to look at the keyboard, the trackpad, how good is the webcam, how good are the speakers, is the microphone any good, is the screen good? And once again, on all of these levels, you will find that the MacBook is either good, great, or best in class. Now sure, for the price, it is still a bit steep. But if you're buying it on an educational discount, which, let's face it, a lot of students out there will be, then I don't think you really can go wrong. But yeah, that's my take on it. It's a phenomenal laptop, and for the price, it's hard to compete with. Great performance, best in class battery life, best in class trackpad, great keyboard, good display, great build quality, great software support, and hell, once again, and if you are in the ecosystem, then well, yeah, it's gonna work even better. Over the last few years, Apple has been killing it with their MacBooks, and it's no exception here. If you're in the market for one, I would still suggest, having a look elsewhere, your Amazons, your other retailers, and then by all means, if you've got access to student discount, then I'll buy it that way. This is certainly a machine that's going to last the test of time. And if this is your first Mac, you'll likely never go back. So, that's been it for today's video. If you enjoyed the review, then be sure to hit the thumbs up button. If you are new around here, then be sure to subscribe, clicking the bell icon to be notified when any of my new videos go live. If you've got any questions with anything you've seen in this video, then be sure to leave them down below in the comment section, or alternatively you can hit me up on my social media, links to which can be found down below in this video's description. I will also leave some affiliate links down below in the description, so if you are interested in checking out and buying this machine, then you'll be able to get it for the cheapest prices available on Amazon. But once again, thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.